paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and I'm so excited with the guest that we're going to chat to tonight. He's fantastic. I've had him on Talking Weird before. In fact, I think before we moved to the Untold Radio Network, he was the very first video Talking Weird we ever did. So that must have been a couple of years ago now. Before we talk about him and his amazing film, it seems like it's almost documentary season, at least for me. Everywhere I look, I'm seeing or I'm interested in documentaries. I'm, of course, shooting my own documentary at the moment about Ray Palmer, the once editor of Amazing Stories, who John Keel said was the man who invented flying saucers, along with Ray Palmer's friend Richard Shaver and the Shaver Mystery, which may very well have introduced many of the concepts that we think about when we think about UFO belief today. I'd love it if you could go over to Facebook and follow the film there. It's just the man who invented flying saucers, so it should be pretty easy to find. And I update that fairly regularly. It's only been up there for about a week or two, and I try to put a post up every couple of days and follow the journey as I make this film. I think it's very interesting. I hope you'll find it just as interesting as I do. And of course, perhaps one of the most exciting documentaries which we're waiting to be made is going to come from the Untold Radio Network's own Doug Hychek, the creator of Monster Quest, is currently running a Kickstarter campaign for the sequel to his amazing film Sasquatch Legend Meets Science. So this is Legend Meets Science 2. And you can get all the details just by looking at Untold Radio AM on Facebook, or go and have a look at the YouTube page. I mean, it's all over the place. If you look at the Talking Weird page, it's there. If you're a friend of mine on Facebook, I regularly post about it. But go and back that campaign. There's all kinds of amazing perks. And Doug's only looking for a reasonable amount to make this feature. Like, if there's anybody who can prove the physical existence of Sasquatch, it's Doug Hychek. We're talking about the man who created the camera and filmed the very first giant squid under the sea when this kind of creature was just, hypothetical. He went out, developed the camera, and shot the thing. So if somebody's going to really go out there and capture evidence of Bigfoot, it's going to be Doug Hychek. So please think about going and supporting that Kickstarter. It's going to be an amazing movie, and I can't wait to see it. Speaking about amazing movies and amazing documentaries, we're going to be talking tonight about a documentary which I actually screened at a film festival that I run in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, a number of years ago now. It's only just been released. Back then it was doing the festival circuit. It rightly won Best Documentary at Midwest Weird Fest. I believe it won awards at a number of other festivals as well. And it's just an incredible movie. It's about the Mkele-Mbembe, the legendary dinosaur type cryptid of the African Congo basin. And the guest tonight, who has returned again, like I said, to Talking Weird, is the film's director. He's an international communication expert, a writer, and a documentary filmmaker. And after graduating in communication and film studies in France, he embraced a career in international development, working with various international organizations in Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and the Pacific. He lived for 3 years in Cameroon, during which he shot 2 feature film documentaries, Message in a Bottle in 2018, and The Explorer, which was the documentary I was just talking about. He's also the author of numerous corporate films he produced for different UN agencies and international NGOs. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back to Talking Weird, Alex Brecher.
Good evening, Dean.
It's so wonderful to have you back.
It's great to be here. It's fantastic.
Like I said, this is a flashback to when we first started doing video. You were our first guest. I think you reminded me we weren't even using StreamYard then. So not only were we not on the Untold Radio Network, I think we were just recording on Skype or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we were just about to screen The Explorer at the Midwest Weird Fest, and it was fantastic, And since then, so many successes have been obtained, and congrats on your movie. I didn't know about that.
I only just announced it publicly last week, so that's the second time I've talked about it anywhere. So I'm pretty excited. As you know, the better than anybody, perhaps I shouldn't talk about the strain and pressures of shooting a documentary. You were suffering in the Congo shooting a documentary, which is different to shooting in down the road where Ray Palmer and Richard Shaver used to live in Amherst, Wisconsin. But before we talk about your incredible film, why don't we show the trailer, and then our audience who are watching, some listen as well, but those who are watching can see the trailer and get a sense of what we're talking about.
La bête est là, elle n'est pas très loin, elle n'est pas très loin de nous.
C'est Mokele-Mbembe? C'est Mokele-Mbembe?
Just fantastic. So for people who weren't watching, that actually said on the screen where people can watch the film, and gave the link to Vimeo. But could you just say for our listeners on various podcast platforms where they can see the film?
So the film is available on Vimeo on demand. So vimeo.ondemand/ the no, so sorry, let me say again, vimeo.com/ondemand/ the Explorer film. So vimeo.com/ondemand/ the Explorer film.
I'll put that in the show notes, so anybody who's watching can just go and look at the program notes and copy and paste that link, or click on it if it's clickable. Now, it's an incredible film, and one of my favorite actual cryptozoological movies ever made. And I've talked about it a number of times with you and with other people. And perhaps what fascinates me most about the movie is that it feels like a Werner Herzog documentary almost. It seems to me to be as much about the struggles of making the film, and the struggles and the I suppose both the upsides and the downsides, or the downside of being an explorer regarding Michel Ballot, who's the I suppose protagonist or the main subject of the documentary. So can you tell us just a little bit about what making that film was actually like, shooting it out in the Congo? My
Yes,
goodness.
absolutely. And thank you very much for your kind words. And actually, I'm a cryptozoology enthusiast. I'm passionate about Mokele-Mbembe and other creatures. And I'm almost certain that, something big lives in the Congo basin. But I didn't want to make a movie on cryptozoology or about cryptozoology. I wanted to meet the interests of cryptozoology followers and enthusiasts like me, but also of people from other sectors, other parts of the world, people who are just interested in adventure. My main goal was to send the message that the age of exploration is not dead, but people have just lost interest. So that sets the stage, and in fact, when you shoot a movie like this one in the Congo basin, so imagine a region which is one of the last wildernesses. So people tend to know the Amazon quite well, but the Congo basin is still very mysterious. There are no paths. When you go and track Mokele-Mbembe, you see no humans. There are no villages for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, literally. So shooting a movie there is challenging for many reasons. First of all, obviously, you don't have electricity to charge the batteries, and that's a big challenge, because when you shoot a documentary, you know that perfectly well, Dean, you have to shoot a lot of footage, to get the small bits that you will use in the final edits. But if you don't have enough batteries, you just simply can't. So you have to think a bit before shooting.
Goodness.
And the second thing is, well, obviously the climate and all the animals that want to kill you out there. So there's large animals, elephants, gorillas, and everything, but the small one and the smallest ones are often the most dangerous and the most annoying.
Is that something that makes you have second thoughts about going out there to do it? I mean, I was very conscious when I was watching the film of those dangers. I mean, it's obvious where they are. It's obvious what could happen to any of you.
Look, I shot the film 2 years ago, and I can tell you that, the film is still very mysterious. There are no path. When you go and track Mokele-Mbembe, you see no humans. There are no villages for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, literally. So when I shot the film, it was my second expedition with Michel Ballot, so this cryptozoologist and researcher that looks for Mokele-Mbembe, that has been looking for the animal for 15 years. So I've been there twice to work on that movie. Before that, I had been several times to the Congo basin while I was working with WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. And now I live in Switzerland because of my other job, but I have only one wish: to go back there as soon as possible, because when you enter that space, it's hostile, it's dangerous. Sometimes you even question whether you're going to come back or not, but that untamed nature is something that's absolutely addictive.
Oh, wow. You're a braver man than me, Alex, going back out there again and again.
Come along next time. You're most welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know whether I'll take you up on it or not. I'll think about it. Can you tell me how you first found out about the Mkele-Mbembe? What started this passion for the beast?
Yes, absolutely. So, a couple of things actually, a couple of life events. The first movie I shot was about the pygmies when I was with WWF, and I remember one night we were close to a place, a forest clearing, where we were observing elephants, and at some point, so we're in the middle of the forest. There were about 100 elephants, and at some point, all the elephants got scared for a reason I don't know, and they all escaped at once. And so we went down and looked. We thought that maybe there were poachers in the area and everything, so we looked for footprints or poachers, but we couldn't find anything. And the pygmies who were with us said, well, sometimes it happens because Mokele-Mbembe comes next to the clearing and it scares the elephant. The elephant are very afraid. And so I said, what? And yeah, they would discuss and describe that large dinosaur sauropod-like animal at the campfire at night. And that's when I first heard about the animal. And a few years later, I found in a bookstore in London, Michel Ballot's book. So the explorer that I followed, I read that book. I was fascinated by the story. He was talking about Mokele-Mbembe. The book is called Looking for Mokele-Mbembe. And then I found his email, sent him a message, and he invited me to join one of his expeditions.
Wow, what an incredible journey. Now, the Mkele-Mbembe fascinates me. It fascinates me for a couple of reasons. One is I'm suspicious of a lot of cryptozoological claims, not because I don't think people have experiences. I just tend to think it might be more paranormal or more supernatural what people experience. Because, for example, somebody saw a Bigfoot down the road from me. I live in a rural area, but I don't live anywhere where I can imagine there's a sustainable enough Sasquatch population for people to be Sasquatch to be seeing Sasquatches. But there is the fact that this thing is seen in, as you were saying before, one of the most remote areas on the planet, still genuine, essentially undiscovered areas where people have never even tread, makes me think if there's going to be perhaps something like this still existent, then here's as good a spot as any. The other thing that interests me is I know that there are people in the biblical creation space who are very interested in things like the ropen in Papua New Guinea, which is like a pterosaur, the Mkele-Mbembe in the Congo basin, because there's the idea that perhaps if one of these things is found, it almost overwrites the current evolutionary and billions of years timeline of the planet Earth. It tends to perhaps condense mankind closer to these creatures than we thought to believe, which were, tens of millions of years ago. Do you have any type of take on that position of the paradigm shattering nature of something like this might be discovered on the creationist or evolutionary timeline, depending how you look at it?
Well, first of all, you're right about the possibility that Mokele-Mbembe exists in the Congo basin. Why? I mean, to keep a species living, you need a breeding population of about 1,000 animals, according to scientists. And we're talking about an area, a forest, that's about the size of Europe. So you could very much have 1,000 large animals roaming that area, and you would go there thousands of times and you wouldn't see them. I mean, it's very hard to spot elephants or gorillas, which are large animals, because the forest is so thick and the animals are so discreet that they're very hard to spot. So there's a concrete possibility that Mokele-Mbembe exists. Now, whether it's a dinosaur, no. Well, it's hard to tell. It is described as a sauropod dinosaur by the local populations, and scientists and researchers think it looks like an apatosaurus. So obviously, finding a living dinosaur would maybe shift some certainties about what we know, and science and everything. But we live surrounded by dinosaurs, sharks, crocodiles, or even that coelacanth fish, that they found in the Indian Ocean in the 60s. So these are living fossils. The coelacanth didn't change since prehistoric times. So does it impact the way we think about our origins? I don't know. I prefer to focus on science, on the research, and bring back tangible proof of the beast's existence.
Speaking about, as we have now a couple times, the native population that believe this thing is existent, that is a real creature. Tell me about a little bit about the approach on how explorers and people like you and Michelle go out there and deal with the native population and question them, because the film deals a little bit like that, but I'm sure you have all kinds of stories you can talk about the engagement with the native population in regards to Mkele-Mbembe.
Absolutely. So basically, it's indispensable to work with the local villagers, the local populations when you look for such animal, because for them it is a reality. So to give you a concrete example, when we arrived in a village, and we had a scene like that, but I had to cut it in the movie because it's already an hour and a half long, so I didn't want to make it too long. But we show a book with different images to the local villagers, pygmies or bantus, and so it has images of different animals. So they see an elephant, they say, well, that's an elephant. A gorilla, that's a gorilla. Then there's a bear, and there are no bears in the area, so they're like, we don't know that animal. And then there's a sauropod dinosaur, and they say, well, that's Mokele-Mbembe, but not, wow, it's extraordinary, it's Mokele-Mbembe, blah, blah. No, it's Mokele-Mbembe, just like it would be a gorilla or an elephant. Their tone doesn't change, so it's quite impressive. So these people, they have extensive knowledge about their area and the village and everything. For them, Mokele-Mbembe has some mystical features, but elephants as well. They believe that elephants are an animal half human, half animal. So all the animals in the forest are kind of mystical in their culture. So we try to separate true information, true scientific, genuine information from their beliefs, but their beliefs are also a key to help us progress in the quest. So it's all about an exchange. It's also dealing, when you have foreigners coming to a region where people are extremely poor. Well, obviously, we have dugouts with engines and everything. So it's also hard to be not to being ripped off, to put it simply, because obviously people see interest in our quest, but there are lots of people who have been looking for Mokele-Mbembe with Michel for years and years and years, the elders of the villagers who have so many stories to tell. So we definitely work with them. Now, my last point is that, well, the last village that we see in the movie, it's called Ndongo. It's the last village before the forest. And we start from that village and we go with local people upstream, 180 kilometers upstream. But then we see no humans. After the village, there is no more village or humans because local villagers are afraid of Mokele-Mbembe. They're all fishermen. Upstream, it's plenty of fish, but no one goes fishing there because they're afraid to die, to being attacked by Mokele-Mbembe.
That's one of the things that I enjoy most about the documentary, those interactions with the local population. And so I'll probably have a few questions about that right now because it all fascinates me. I love the tension in the film between Michel and two of his companions regarding the mystical perceptions of the local population to Mkele-Mbembe. Like Michel's very scientific, he's very clear cut. He's like, this is all nonsense. And his companions are like, well, as an ethnologist, you have to come here and you have to be open to these kind of what seem to Western perception or Western sensibilities, very, very strange ideas, because these people deal with this creature all the time. So perhaps in here lies, some truths.
Of course, it's always the same. The two visions that confront sometimes. Um, we want to find things through a scientific approach. I don't know. I grew up in France. We believe in science. There is a few religions, but religions that we know, in Europe or North Africa. There you enter a world where people have different gods, different beliefs, and different knowledge. I spent lots of times with the pygmies, for example, and one day I felt really sick on the shooting of my first movie, and so I took my pills. I had belly pain. You often get sick with the belly over there, and it didn't relieve me for a couple of days, and I thought I would die in my tent. And then the pygmies came with a plant, with a kind of powder. They made me kind of tea with that, and I was like, okay, whatever, it can be worse. And a few hours later, I was perfectly fine. So
Wow.
you have to trust these people. You're their guests, so you have to act as a guest. I'm French. I'm passionate about Bigfoot. If I go to West America, for example, with some Bigfoot researcher, I won't come, with my techniques and say, yes, this is the way we should do things. No, I will listen to people first of all to have a chance to find something.
That's interesting, your background, obviously, as being a Frenchman. Have you ever, and if you haven't, it's fine because it's fairly obscure. Have you ever read Morning of the Magicians by Brashear and Pals?
Yes.
Because that deals with some of these questions about science and mysticism and the intersection. It's a little bit off topic, but I'd love to hear what you think about that book.
Well, I read it a while ago and I can't recall very well, but obviously mysticism is something, well, it adds to your quest, to whatever you're looking for. You have to consider that as one of the keys that you need to unlock a potential big mystery. So lots of expeditions, I've been, for example, coming back to Mokele-Mbembe, to the forest, and just disregard that. For them, it's just like superstition. And I tend to say sometimes, sometimes I confront with scientists and I talk about Mokele-Mbembe, and they're like, no, there's no footprints are not proof. We found footprints and everything, but they're not proof. And this is how it goes, and it can exist, and it could have been found, and blah blah blah. Well, the greatest mystery is life after death. We don't know what will happen. So how can we not believe in mysteries while the greatest mystery that we will all experience sometimes lies ahead of us?
That's a very, very good point. Just to stay with the interaction with the locals a little bit, because again, it's one of the most fascinating parts of the film for me. I love how, while Michel's obviously passionate about the Mkele-Mbembe and wants to find it, he's also you're quite conscious in that film that he's careful not to be too taken advantage of by the locals who might just be wanting a payday for various reasons. And that made me think of something only recently, is that there's a big tradition now in the West for paranormal tourism. So, for example, people go to Roswell, New Mexico because of something that supposedly happened there now. There's a Mothman festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Every second town has, a museum about something or a celebration about something. There's a UFO Days festival not far from me where there's been UFO landings. And we could go ad infinitum about this. Obviously, Bigfoot, there's Bigfoot stuff all around this country, Bigfoot museums in, Falk, Arkansas, because of the Beast of Boggy Creek, and in the Pacific Northwest. And again, Loch Ness is another example. Obviously, there aren't going to be a lot of the type of tourists who just pack the car and go for a trip across, the state with their kids to see a Bigfoot museum in the case of Mkele-Mbembe. But one suspects, and I think even Michel might to a degree, is that regardless of the reality of the creature or not, there must be an attempt by the local economy or even just individuals in that economy to think there are people interested. This could be a payday for us. So that must be something you're quite conscious of when you're out there in the field as well, I'm guessing.
Yes, but there's a slight difference between flying to Area 51 or to Nevada and
Hmm.
to the village of Ndongo in the Congo basin. So it's a bit farther, so you have
Oh,
to fly
absolutely.
first of all to Yaoundé, then drive for 3 days, then take a dugout on the boat for about 1 day, and if everything goes well and nothing goes well, in 5 days you reach your destination. So it's a bit difficult, and basically you have very, very, very few people
Of course.
going there. The places we see, the Enki waterfalls that you see in the movie, I don't know, maybe a handful of people, of Western people saw them before. So it's absolutely remote. Now Michel has been going there for 15 years, and of course, some locals, they try to take advantage of him. They're extremely poor. They live out of copper, of ivory, of poaching as well. That poaching is absolutely rampant in the area. And so it's a bit difficult for them, the living conditions. So when they see us, obviously they try to take advantage, but it's also, we play with that. If we found a large lizard or whatever Mokele-Mbembe is in the area, it would be for them the end of misery. And tourism would develop, people would travel there to see that animal, and so they share also an interest in seeing a quest succeed.
Yeah, that is interesting. You mentioned then, and I know you have in the past as well, that it might be a large lizard, for example, like a giant monitor lizard or something, which is developed physically differently to a traditional, perhaps, monitor lizard. What's your gut instinct, though? Because I know often people who are saying into Sasquatch research say, well, I think it's a relict hominid, or some people might say, I think it's an undiscovered North American ape. And the same with Nessie research. Some people say, well, it's a giant eel, or some people say, I think it's a plesiosaur, or, it's an undiscovered freshwater whale, or, whatever. There's often different positions which we can't be sure of any of them. But which way do you lean in the interpretation of Mkele-Mbembe?
Well, so we found footprints, and that was the highlight of my first expedition. And I went on my first expedition just to live an adventure and to discover that region and everything. Well, we found footprints, so I came back as as a genuine believer that there's something big living out there. We analyzed the footprints, and actually they look very reptilian. So it could be a giant monitor lizard with a long neck. I was recently in Australia, in Sydney, and at the Sydney Aquarium, you have a turtle with a very long neck, and I was looking at the animal and saying, well, maybe that's Mokele-Mbembe. I really think it's
Huh.
an animal that adapted to that kind of environment where the trees are very high, where the light is scarce, so maybe developing a long neck would have made sense. Also, the local say that it eats some fruits that grow on the trees, so it would be a possibility that animal has a long neck, to eat the trees. So it monitor lizard with a long neck, why not?
Interesting. No, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that something's there. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk too much about the footprint reveal or not, because it's such a powerful moment in the film. Without giving too many spoilers, I will say that it's super convincing when those footprints are shown. Like there isn't like, oh, here are the footprints. Everybody's so tired, it's like they don't even care at first. And then they're like, oh, this is actually important. You must have been conscious of that when you were filming it as well, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie too much,
Okay, well, we
obviously,
we we
but
don't even have to talk about that, but I'm just saying that's a part people should watch it. It's a fantastic film. That's just an amazing, and that's an amazing part of the movie. Very powerful part of the movie, by the way.
But the thing is, when even, okay, not talking about the second expedition, but the first expedition, because every time we go there, we find things, and um, uh, well, when you're rewarded to that extent of finding a footprint or a series of footprints, whenever and then let the people watch the movie and have their own opinion about what we found. But when you find something like that rewards weeks of effort, harsh walks in the jungle, expedition being bitten by so many different insects and everything. When you look at a footprint and you imagine that the giant animal, that Mokele-Mbembe, uh, might have walked there. You look at the area, you look at the trees, the silence, it's something absolutely incredible. It's becoming real. You're pursuing a dream, you're pursuing a myth, or you don't know what, but now you see something that's completely real. So yes, it's definitely an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I can only imagine the elation. Let's just quickly maybe jump forward a little bit because I know you're thinking about going back, and I know you have some plans on what that next trip might kind of look like. Could you share some of those ideas with
Yes,
us?
absolutely. Absolutely. So the thing is, we have found very compelling evidence that something is out there in the form of footprints or broken branches that places where a big animal could have lived. We heard a very loud roar back during the first expedition in 2015, and actually when trying to we have a recording that's very bad, but one of the most prominent cryptozoologist in the US called Dr. William Gibbons listened at that roar and said it's exactly the same roar that I heard in the same area 2 or 3 years ago when I was on expedition. So there's so many pieces of evidence that we are putting together, and that prove that this animal certainly exists. Now our biggest problem is that we always go into the place where it's supposed to live with engines, with boats, with engines. So we go upstream towards the waterfalls. Now we are thinking of completely changing our approach and doing a silent expedition. So basically, we would go from, downstream from a village, so 300 or 400 kilometers up north on the river with kayaks. It's a bit complicated because there are rapids, so at some points we'd have to stop to carve our path in the jungle and to carry our kayaks and everything, and we'd float down the river for about 10 days to reach that same village of Ndongo from where our expedition starts. And if you're completely silent in this forest, you see things. The more silent you are, you see things. The worse, you see elephants, gorillas, things that come to drink. But if there is something, there are so many islands where Mokele-Mbembe can live. You have good chances of observing one. And I think that's the next step in our research. Observing a Mokele-Mbembe, taking a picture would be, well, life-changing.
Wow. You should talk to Doug Hychek, who runs this channel and has the flagship show he does with his son Alex, which is called Untold Radio AM, because he was the creator of Monster Quest. And as I mentioned in the introduction, he did things like develop the camera, which filmed, took the real footage of a giant squid. But I remember back in Monster Quest, I think it was that show, or it might have been another show he did called Mysterious Encounters, but I think it was Monster Quest. He developed a similar idea to perhaps be able to find Bigfoot. And his idea was if you mountain bike down without making any noise, just on a bike which was quite silent, you had a better potential of bumping into wildlife than if you were going through there, I guess in ATVs or something. And so it sounds like it's a different environment, but it sounds like a similar approach you have to do something which is far more silent, and you have a better chance of just bumping into wildlife that way. So it sounds
Absolutely.
fascinating.
I'm sure he'd be excited because there was a very well-known Monster Quest episode on the search for Mokele-Mbembe where they found very large shapes, with a sonar. So
Yeah, was that the one too where they thought? I'm trying to remember. You're probably more familiar with it than me. I know it was something I saw about the creature once that they thought it might have lived in kind of mud caves or something on the side of a
yes,
river. Yeah, interesting.
abso-
Is that something you've tried to
absolutely.
do as well? Look for where it might sleep or where it might nest, or is that something Michel's tried to do when he's been out there?
Yes, so the expedition during which we shot the movie was so I went on that first expedition with Michel, and a couple of years later, Michel called me and told me, well, Alex, apparently my trackers have found large caves where the animal lives. So it's very far. We have to mount a super large expedition, hire about 20 people to carry our stuff, and be in total autonomy in the forest for days and days and days, and but it's my most ambitious expedition. Do you want to come along? And I said yes, of course, but I will do a movie. I want to shoot everything. So that's the expedition that I shot. And in fact, it was really far. Well, you will see in the movie, we did not manage to reach the caves, to reach the caves, because of everything that happened and all the adventures that, I mean, you saw that in the movie, obviously, and it was a bit challenging. But going downstream with kayaks would allow us to see these famous caves, because according to the local trackers, the caves are just next to the river.
Wow.
And the cool thing is that, well, I've been doing some research. I have that in mind for about a year and a half. I've been doing lots of research. I've been integrating lots of people who know their area perfectly well. There's no public records of an expedition who has been there. So we might be the first ones to discover that part of the world. And, it's totally amazing.
That is completely amazing. And you'll film that as well, I'm hoping, if you
Of course. Of course.
Will it be The Explorer 2? Is that the working title, or do you have a different title in mind? Or
I think no, not necessarily, because what I would love to do, that first movie was based on the vision of Michel Ballot.
Mhm.
I would like to reverse that and make it based on the vision of one of the trackers. What do they think? So we would follow one of the local guys, in that search for Mokele-Mbembe.
Oh, nice.
And I think I would have to take a crew with me, or some person who film. I filmed the first one, but the other expedition, well, it's my idea. I'd like to lead it.
That'd be fantastic. To have more of you on camera, that would be great.
Yeah.
There's that wonderful moment at the beginning of the documentary when I think it's only one of the only times we see you is when you're with your son in the museum and looking at dinosaur bones. My daughter's absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs as well, and has been for a long time. So that must be something that you share with your son. What does he think about you going out looking for this thing?
My son is absolutely fascinated. Just a few minutes before joining you in the virtual studio, I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah. I mean, tell him about the next expedition and everything. So he's absolutely fascinated. But the funny story is that, well, before joining my first expedition to look for Mokele-Mbembe, so I told my wife, she's Italian, she comes from a very traditional Italian family, and I told her, like, well, look, so I'm gonna go to the forest, I'm gonna disappear for 3 weeks. There is obviously no network, so you won't be able to reach me, but that's fine. I mean, are you okay with me going there? And she was like, yeah, of course. And then she went back home to Italy to her family. And her uncle told her at some point, well, look, I have to talk to you. Your husband is cheating on you. And she was like,
Oh,
what?
no.
And he said, well, him going to the jungle to search for a living dinosaur and who has no networks for 3 weeks. I mean, the guy is good.
Yeah, what a great story or alibi that would be. I'm just looking for a dinosaur, baby. I'm out in the jungle. But it does seem like you have the support of your family, and obviously in this kind of field, that's an important thing. I think you mentioned to me in the past that there are other African cryptids and other cryptids on your many expeditions doing work for NGOs that you've heard about or experienced as well. Can you tell our audience a little bit about some of those?
Absolutely. Well, there is another animal called Emela-Ntuka. And Mkele-Mbembe means the elephant killer. So it's an animal with a large horn that's very known in Central Africa and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And some people and some cryptozoologists have thought that it might be a triceratops. So obviously these are just interpretations of the descriptions of the locals, but we got lots of first-hand testimonies as well that that animal would exist. You have cryptids all across Africa. So in Central Africa is Emele and Mokele-Mbembe, of course. I was in South Africa recently, and people were telling me about a lake monster that lives there, that would have the shape of a giant snake, and it reminded me some descriptions of Ogopogo. So yes, all across the continent you have some animals, but mostly reptilians or dinosaurs or that kind of animal.
Have you heard any reports in your travels of flying dinosaurs or flying old lizards, things like the ropin in Papua New Guinea or anything like a pterosaur?
Yes, absolutely. In Central Africa as well, there has been some sightings, but very few. The reason is that it's very hard to see the sky, and there's always constant fog above the canopy. So but some people did sometimes in clearings or on top of hills apparently saw things and flying lizards. That's what they would say. So yes, there has been reports as well. Now, is it a reality? Is it a myth? I really don't know. That dinosaur trend hasn't picked up yet, and the locals are still very disconnected from the internet or from the rest of the world. But if you look at all the expeditions that went there to look for Mokele-Mbembe from the first one was the first descriptions came from the missionaries in 1771. And then you had these big expeditions in the 80s with Dr. Roy McCall, that was very famous. Disney shot a movie called The Baby, The Secret of the Lost Legend, which is an excellent movie. It's about a track for Mokele-Mbembe. So lots of people have been going there, talking about dinosaurs, talking about cryptids. So, I'm not sure exactly what is true, what is fake. But once again, Mokele-Mbembe, it's there. There's too many evidence to make me think that it's a myth. For me, it's a real animal of flesh and blood. Sorry.
If you come back from, say, the next expedition with irrefutable proof, whether it's video or photo or something else, I mean, imagine having an actual specimen, like of some description, but a physical specimen. What we talked a little bit about the scientific implications, what this might do to a paradigm of, this type of idea of the nature of creation and evolution and the like. But what do you think that discovery would do at an environmental or a political level to the area? Do you think that it would change it would become an area that was protected more under type of wildlife protection legislation? Or what do you think what would there be ramifications if you found something like that?
Of course, and that's also one of the objectives of our expeditions, and why I shot this movie. There's a strong environmental component in my movie, because I talk about the elephant and the elephant massacre. So the elephants in the area, you have forest elephants, and they're hunted relentlessly because their ivory is they call it pink ivory, so it's even more valuable than the regular ivory of the savanna elephants.
Wow.
And basically more than half of the populations, the elephant population, has disappeared over the past 10 or 15 years. So it's just a massacre. And countries are trying to protect the area, but corruption, less ability to control, less people and workforce on the ground, makes it very, very difficult. Now you find something like Mokele-Mbembe, giant lizards, unknown lizard in the population. You locate it and you make that accessible. People would pay lots of money to go there, and sustainable tourism could start from there. Look at the mountain gorillas in Rwanda, Uganda, and east of DRC. We're talking about a conflict zone where different armed groups are competing over resources, and there have been bloody wars over the centuries in that part of the world. Now, when that sustainable gorilla tourism started, the area became more and more secure. People went there. The local populations were making money out of tourism, and it helped stabilize the region and obviously protect the Virunga National Park, which is absolutely amazing. So if something like that happened in the Congo basin, it would change, well, the life not only of the local populations, but also of the rest of the world. We're talking about one of the two lungs that we have on planet Earth. You have the Amazon, you have the Congo basin. So well, it would be an excellent excuse to protect that area, that pristine forest.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. You mentioned then the poaching which goes on, which is looked at in the documentary as well. We talked before about the dangers that are presented by the various beasties and bugs and things that can kill you in that capacity. When you're out there, are you concerned about running into a human predator, like somebody that might bump you off, because you might have money or just because you get in the way of their poaching or for whatever reason?
Of course, we did. We did actually run into poachers. We didn't see them, but we saw a dead elephant floating down the river, and we heard gunshots, and we decided to escape. Look, I mean, these people are there to kill elephants. They have war weapons. We generally go there with one or two local army people, like gendarmes. They have Kalashnikovs, but in front of an M6 or lots of people with super heavily harmed, we wouldn't survive. And if you witness their activity, you're likely to get killed. I mean, they would kill you. No one would hear about you, in the middle of the forest, no traces, nothing, and they would leave with the ivory. Michel on his second or third expedition saw the camp of a group of poachers, and they decided to escape, to leave. And a few days later, the local police arrested the poachers, and they found human flesh in their suitcases. They had suitcases with human flesh. So
Gosh.
we're talking about the lawless area where not only they do poaching, but human trafficking, rituals, sacrifices still take place. So it's obviously very dangerous.
My goodness. You mentioned before that if you ever came to America and went on a Sasquatch expedition, that you'd follow what the local Sasquatch researchers would tell you. That would seem a far less dangerous documentary to make than another one about the Mkele-Mbembe.
Look, Mokele-Mbembe, you have three main dangers. The first one is obviously the snakes. Well, you have many different types of snakes, and the two main types are the green mamba that lives in the trees. So basically, and you constantly, your face, your arms, whatever parts of your body that you touch the trees. So if you have a green mamba, well, bad luck, it can kill you in about an hour and a half. Then you have the black mamba, that's a territorial snake. So the snake would attack you on purpose if you enter his territory. And you have another snake that the locals call the snake 321, because it bites you, and 321, it's finished.
Gosh.
And we never identified what kind of snake it was. So that's the main danger, snakes. We're always afraid of snakes, looking at sleeping bags and everything. The second danger, of course, it's poachers. Bumping into a column of poachers would really get you into trouble. And the third one is elephants. Forest elephants are smaller but much more aggressive than the savanna elephants. And if an elephant chases you, you have to run very fast and to hide. Their eyesight is bad, so you have really to run fast. Otherwise, the elephant will chase you until it kills you.
I tell you what, I've thought about your kind invitation to join you on the next expedition. I'm going to have to decline. I'm sorry, Alex.
well, I've been on a few expeditions. I always came back. Michel came back, and obviously, I would be really tempted to go to the US and to look for Sasquatch, because, well, it's a great area and a fantastic cryptid, and there are so many things, and I'm fascinated by the Patterson and Gimlin film, obviously, like many of us, but trust me, if you come with me to the Congo basin once, because these are the dangers, and at the beginning you're afraid, but then you discover a world that's completely unspoiled, and it's so magnificent that you tend to forget about the dangers. You forget about the mosquitoes. You forget about tsetse flies, the snake 321. Okay, you check your sleeping bag. That's fine, and then I don't know, you just evolve in a beautiful environment, and you forget about the bad things.
Now I almost want to come with you again. I'm going back and forth. Let's talk just hypothetically. If you were to do, say, a Sasquatch documentary, say you were to come to North America and do a Sasquatch documentary, what would be your approach? What do you see would be a different way to dealing with the subject? What would be your unique French eye or your unique background? How do you think you'd approach that?
I would focus on people looking for Sasquatch. Uh, when I shot The Explorer, my film on Mokele-Mbembe and on Michel, so I questioned myself, if we see a Mokele-Mbembe emerging from the water, okay, we're on the boat, we see, boom, a big Mokele-Mbembe in front of us. What do I film? Do I film Mokele-Mbembe? Maybe I take a picture, of course. Or do I film Michel? So imagine a guy who has dropped everything 15 years ago to go and search for Mokele-Mbembe, who made so many sacrifices. Imagine the distrust from his friends. Oh, what are you doing? That guy is crazy and everything. And who dedicates his life to the noble quest for a cryptid. If he sees it, imagine what's happening in his eyes must be even more exciting than the beast itself. So if I was to do a documentary on Sasquatch, well, I would focus on people looking for Sasquatch. Who are they? Where do they come from? What drives them? Why Sasquatch? I mean, there's so many questions I would like to ask them.
Fantastic. I'd love to see that film. And by the way, The Explorer is so beautifully shot. It's such a beautiful looking documentary. Just for somebody who's an aestheticist like me, who likes looking at pretty things, it's a pretty movie. You did an incredible job.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It was challenging, but thank you for telling me I did a good job. Once again, the forest is so beautiful that I wanted to give back something to that forest, and the least I could do was to try to think my shots thoroughly, and try to share the beauty of that forest with the audience.
It must be hard. I was thinking this when I was watching. When you guys are slogging through this incredibly thick jungle, I'm wondering, how does Alex even have the wherewithal or I suppose, enough energy left to pull out the film? Because people look like they're about to drop over from the strain. There are shots of Michel where he looks like he's ready to give up the ghost almost. Like, it's clearly hard, but you're there having to film this. That must have been physically strenuous, I imagine.
I lost 6 kgs during the expedition. So to put it simply, it was physically really, really challenging. And the rest of the expedition, they were all super tired. But, I mean, when you're doing a movie, you're a documentary filmmaker as well, then, it's the best thing in the world when you like that stuff,
That's
So
true.
you have a chance to being on a Mokele-Mbembe expedition in the middle of the jungle, you forget about the fact that you're tired or that you're sick or not feeling well. You just shoot and shoot and shoot. Now, when light goes down, when at that nighttime, it's a bit more complicated because you are not filming anymore, and now all the the pain of the day, comes back on your shoulder, and you generally get a good sleep. I have a funny story. One night, after a full day of shooting in jungle, so we put the tent, a small island next to the river when we were coming back. And the tent I had for that expedition was too small for me. And I'm very tall. And so at some point at 4 in the morning, I felt that I needed to stretch my legs. So I started stretching my legs. And right on the other side of the tent, I felt a very cold body, something moving on the other side of the tent. So you just had the nylon, and I opened the door of the tent, and it was like a giant python of a few meters long, an enormous snake.
Goodness
And I was
gracious.
like, okay, so is that a dangerous snake? No. Is that thing gonna try to kill me? No. Am I in danger? No. Okay, I'm too tired. You just close the tent, go back to sleep.
Oh, fantastic. I I guess it's a little bit different for you. As much as you're interested in the animal, at least you get the reward of capturing this wonderful documentary footage when you go out there. So you come back with something which is real and solid and, as I was saying, quite beautiful. But for, say, Michelle, and maybe for the other part of you which is interested in the beast, I always think of people. We'll just look at Bigfoot research for an example. People like Peter Byrne, who's still alive, I believe, but in his 90s, but Rene DeHenden, John Green, all those early guys who were out there looking for Sasquatch in America dating back to the 50s, and they never even saw the thing. You know what I mean? Some of these guys, they never had it. The closest they got was a footprint. That must be something which would be a terrible weight to carry, to go through a career of looking for this thing and coming away essentially empty-handed. Is that something you're conscious of, or you think about people like Michelle experiencing? Or
It depends what you're after. I mean, you're after the journey, or are you after the destination? I think that Michelle, myself, uh, people who look for known animals or for mysteries, they enjoy the journey so much that the destination matters less. Obviously, finding something would be absolutely amazing, but look, the simple fact, jumping on a plane, going to Africa, arriving at night, at this busy airport, these cities, then going 3 days on off tracks, to reach a port on the river, and then going to the unknown. These feelings are just so fantastic that finding the animal is a bonus, but the adventure is absolutely worth being lived.
I can't think of a better ending to the show than that. How fantastic. Just wonderful talking to you again. Again, how can people watch the film? Because they should. It's an amazing documentary. You'll love it. Anybody who likes this channel, likes this content, you have to watch The Explorer. It's incredible.
Thank you. So it's available on Vimeo on demand. So vimeo.com/on demand/The Explorer film. And all the revenue, we try to keep the price as low as possible so people can rent it or buy it. And all the revenue we will make from the movie will be used to fund our next expedition, the silent one, kayaking down the Jar River.
I can't wait for that. You better let me have that to screen at Midwest Weird Fest as well once it's done.
I would love that. I would love that. And
Just
if we have footage of Mokele-Mbembe, I think that the Midwest Weird Fest would be a great platform to reveal them to the world.
Oh, I can't tell you how excited I would be. I don't know if there is anything. Do you have a site where people can keep a track of your, like, as you travel forward to the next expedition as well, if people want to see what you're up to, or like a Facebook page or something?
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook page with a very dynamic and engaged community, and it's on Facebook. It's facebook.com/The Explorer Film.
It is a good
And
page. I'm a member.
thank you. And we share everything about our expeditions. And soon we're going to share an interview that I did recently with Michel, where he talks about his latest expedition. So their news and yeah, we'll continue posting stuff and obviously prepare the next expedition on that page.
Fantastic. Keep me posted. And when you're, in fact, even before you do the expedition, when you're geared up to do it, let's get you back on just to talk about what your plans are when you're on top of going out there. That'd be fantastic. I'd love that.
I would love that too. And thank you so much, Dean. You've been a great supporter of the film. I mean, we've met virtually a few years ago since we've screened at Midwest Weird Fest, and since that, really, you opened many doors for the film, and I thank you so much for your interest. And really, with people like you, the best we can do is bring now tangible proof of Mokele-Mbembe's existence.
Oh, I can't wait to see the next one. And it's my pleasure to help. Like I said, I'm a big believer in the film and in you and what you do. So until I get to talk to you, Alex, and until I get to see everybody out there again, keep it weird.
Thank you so much.